But first, this is what the left spawned. That's the focus of tonight's angle.
We can't do nothing.
We can!
Not here!
We have to end Zionist!
Making Molotov cocktails.
Palestine is dying! And for us, they are killers!
Before we get to that horrific terror attack in Boulder, Colorado, it is important tonight to understand how we got here. It's because the left loves open borders, they love unlimited immigration, and they love anti-Israel radicalism. And under Biden, all their dreams came true. More than 10 million, well, we'll never really know the real number, of illegal border crossers, gotaways, refugees, special category parolees, and visa overstayers poured into the country. It's a figure so vast that it overwhelms the systems that we have in place to process these people. And that was the goal all along. Too big a number to deport. Also under Biden, the pro-Hamas, pro-Gaza chaos on college campuses terrified Jewish students and disrupted the education of others. This was tolerated and, in some cases, even encouraged. It was considered cool to be anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian, and the fact that the chants from the river to the sea were the chants of a violent terrorist organization, none of it mattered. Now, Trump was elected in large part, I'd say, because most Americans are sick and tired of being treated like second-class citizens in their own country, as millions are allowed to come here, stay here, side with terrorists, game the system, or even issue demands. This is insane, and the Trump administration is taking action. As with every Trump action that's popular, though, of course, he faces judicial roadblocks. But he's forging ahead the best he can. But we have other problems on the visa front, too. Now, of course, as we mentioned in Boulder, Colorado, a place you'd not exactly expect to be considered a hotbed of Islamic radicalism. But with years of uncontrolled immigration and loosey-goosey visa systems, anything can happen. Now, the details of this latest anti-Semitic attack on American soil are as sickening as they are infuriating. The man charged literally tried to incinerate people with an incendiary device, including an actual Holocaust survivor, according to one of the friends of the victims. Now, this location was chosen for one reason and one reason only, because there would be Jews there, or at least people who supported Israel. The occasion was a regular peaceful gathering to honor the hostages still being held in Gaza. The suspect, he's named Mohammed Sabri Soliman. And surprise, he's here illegally.
And when he was interviewed about the attack, he said he wanted them all to die. He had no regrets, and he would go back and do it again. He said that he had previously tried to purchase a firearm, but resorted to the Molotov cocktails when he could not purchase a gun because he was not a legal citizen.
A jihadist in the mountains. State charges against him include 16 counts of attempted first-degree murder, a use of an incendiary device, crimes against the elderly, that's just to name a few. And this afternoon, the feds charged him with a hate crime involving actual or perceived race, religion, or national origin.
There were 16 unused Molotov cocktails within arm's reach of the subject at the time of his arrest. So there is no question that the first responders saved lives and prevented further victims from being injured.
Of course, beyond the sick Islamist violent nature of this attack is the added fact that Soliman should not have been here in the first place. An Egyptian national, this depraved lunatic, was granted a tourist visa. He arrived at LAX in August of 2022, but never left when he was supposed to in February of 2023. That's about 6 months. He even filed a claim for asylum in late September of 2022, another scam. And somehow, with an expired visa, he was still allowed to get work authorization in the United States. What? Yeah, USCIS gave him permission to work here. So think about that, rewarding someone who couldn't be bothered to follow our rules as a guest in our country with work permit. Now, that was a grave mistake and should never have been allowed. He's apparently been driving an Uber. How reassuring for all you ride sharers. Now, according to DHS, there was more than 500,000 suspected visa overstays at the end of fiscal year 2023. But of course, at this point, that number could be much higher. I can't imagine it's not. We had better get a handle on this and take action. On the campaign trail, President Trump was cheered most enthusiastically when he promised to carry out mass deportations. I was at those rallies. And of course, again, he has activist judges to deal with. And he needs more money from Congress and the manpower to carry out these deportations. But each and every one of the millions of foreigners who are here without authorization, either because they crossed the border illegally or failed to follow the clear provisions of their visas, should leave or immediately be deported. Republicans in Congress, senators looking over the big, beautiful bill, should make sure that there are adequate funds to carry out the basic mission of government, to keep our country safe, to enforce our laws. I was thinking about this. I was watching that, capturing bin Laden thing on Netflix, and I was thinking, gosh, it's been 26 years almost since 9/11. And that was the worst attack on American soil. But this was carried out in part by hijackers who were on expired visas, including Mohammed Atta, the ringleader, who, by the way, was also an Egyptian. And the 9/11 Commission's final report gave specific recommendations regarding the visa process, including biometric identifiers like digital photos and fingerprints that track all exit and entry data, both ways. Now, many of the recommendations of the 9/11 Commission have never been implemented. But of course, people still have to take their shoes off on TSA and still have a slow bureaucratic mess there at the airports. Chris Kobach, an old friend, raised a good point on X yesterday. After the attacks, he designed a system to alert law enforcement, state law enforcement, whenever an illegal from a high-risk country overstayed his visa. So what happened to that program? Well, Obama canceled it. Outrageous. Thanks, Barack. Now, this is completely unacceptable, and now it's turned deadly. Along with the normalization of anti-Jewish hate, the festering sores that we've seen on college campuses, this is the backdrop. Just a few weeks ago here in D.C., we were reporting on the young couple gunned down at the hands of another pro-Palestinian radical who thought he was doing the world a favor. And just like this attacker, by the way, who, according to police, said he wanted to kill all the Zionist people. Any politician who tries to argue that illegals have a right to be here or that visa overstayers should be shown leniency either doesn't have the brain power to understand the stakes or doesn't give a rip about America. Either way, vote him out of office. The number one priority of our government has to be to keep American people safe. The Biden administration, whoever was in charge, committed, and I said this repeatedly, 2022 onward, I believe they committed ongoing treason against this country. All of them, including Alejandro Mayorkas, Biden, Harris, they all put us in danger. And they knew they were doing it. But they thought they were safe. Their people were safe. So they didn't care. So congressional Republicans, they had to fight to get information last year about the terror threats because of Biden's open border. Remember that? And yeah, they finally found out that the Biden people even released 100 people on the terror watch list into America. Wonder what are they all driving Ubers? Donald Trump is 100% correct to do everything in his power at every level to keep us safe, to secure our border, and to deport anyone here who has broken the law. ICE has managed to deport about 85,000 people so far. We've got about 15 million to go. Do the math. Now, if a Democrat wins in 2028, expect another 10 million to be let in during another 4-year period. That is their policy. It's not an accident. We should never let this issue go. It is our country. It is our safety. And it's a political winner because Americans understand how very high the stakes are. It's life or death. And that's the angle.
Biden world's starting to crack. And the big guys getting the whistle blown on them. Secret Service agents are coming out of the woodwork, saying behind the scenes, Joe was even worse than we thought.
This Secret Service whistleblower actually was assigned to Biden, and he told me that Biden used to get lost in his closet in the mornings in the White House. I mean, the guy literally stumbling around in the White House residence couldn't find his way out of his own closet. The president of the United States. I mean, this is outrageous.
The leader of the free world couldn't find his way out of the closet, and no one noticed. Joe was locked inside while his team was out running the country. The speaker said when he went to the White House, Biden didn't even know what he'd signed off on.
Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me, stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order, 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed.
Joe Biden didn't even know what the Biden foreign policy was. That's how bad it was. Democrats all knew Joe's brain was fried.
There's a senator, Senator Bennett from Colorado, who went to an event in June 2024 where Biden seemed non-functioning, and he left that event, and this is in the book, thinking this is why our border policy, our immigration policy is such a mess. This guy can't manage the portfolio. There are competing groups within the administration, and he's not engaged for whatever reason, and that's why this policy is such a mess.
Did Biden even know the border was wide open? If he didn't, then who opened it? That's what the hearings will find out. Bill Maher, he's wondering why Democrats even let Joe run.
If you really thought Trump was the existential threat he was, then, to your point earlier, why put up Biden? If it was really that important. I mean, Democrats will never be able to answer that question. If that election was really that important, you couldn't summon the courage to confront an old man that your time has passed?
Well, that's a good question.
Democrats knew Joe was fried back in 2020, and they all backed him up. On the campaign trail, he was forgetting the names of aides he'd worked with for 40 years. Staffers were alarmed and would whisper how the big guy wasn't 100%. They thought it was a miracle that COVID happened and Joe went into the bunker. But Slick Willie swears for 4 years he didn't know a thing.
Did you ever have a moment with him where you thought maybe he was unfit to run for president? No.
I thought he was a good president. The only concern I thought he had to deal with was, could anybody do that job until they were 86? And we'd had several long talks. I had never seen him and walked away thinking he can't do this anymore. He was always on top of his brief.
You never saw any cognitive decline?
So I didn't know anything about any of this, and I haven't read the book. I saw President Biden not very long ago, and I thought he was in good shape.
We knew Bubba was in great shape when he was president. He never wandered into a closet alone. Clinton's still keeping up with the hoax. Chuck Todd says, no, not so fast.
There's almost an eagerness to blame the press without looking at who should be blamed here, and it's the leadership and, frankly, the members of the Biden administration and the leadership of the Democratic Party, who they're the ones that lied. Look, at the end of the day, no journalist is as good as their sources. At the end of the day, the Democratic Party lied to the American people. The leadership of the party lied to the American people. And that's where this scandal should be centered.
Todd says he needed sources to know Biden was cooked. No. He needed a TV. This is like the emperor with no clothes. Democrats all just pretended they didn't notice. The whole country knew Joe was exposed, and the Democrat Party's paying a price.
Which party is better described as the party with strong leaders? Look at this.
Wow.
16% of Americans say Democrats, 40% say that of the Republican Party. Now, overall, no party's doing great. Lots of Americans say neither of these qualities apply to either party. But look at how much worse off the Democrats are. A party that gets things done. Only 19% of Americans say that about the Democrats. So among Democrats and Democratic leaners, 32% say Democrats are the party with strong leaders. I mean, of their own kind.
Joe was weak, and the only action the party took in 4 years was whacking him. Besides that, they got nothing done. Clinton's in denial, Barack's in hiding, and Nancy's got a broken hip. The only one still out there is Chuck, but he can't even get his talking points straight.
Not made it clear that we're in Zelensky's corner. I hope on Ukraine the president's not the taco president. Trump always loses the fight. Trump always cops out, is what TACO stands for.
Schumer can't even get through a book tour without getting heckled.
The Jewish deli has a rock thrown through it because it's...
Chuck Schumer! You can't more about a fake anti-Semitism crisis than a real Holocaust to the Palestinian people! Come on. There's a real Holocaust happening in Gaza!
You have blood in your hands! You're a liar! A filthy liar! Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you! You have blood on your hands! Free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Democrats are yelling the same slogans as terrorists. That's got to drive Chuck nuts. The senator doesn't even fight back. He just sits there with his legs crossed. His term's up in 26. It's time for him to go. And everyone knows it.
I don't think that they can continue with the current elites that are in power. I don't think with Pelosi.
They got to go.
They've lost the people.
I just told Chris this. These are culture wars.
Yeah, and the Democrats just don't know how to play culture. And you want to know why they don't know? Because they're not in the culture. They're in Ivy League institutions. They're on the Upper East Side of New York. They're handing out at fancy dinners. They're patting themselves on the back on golf courses. They are not in with the regular people. Now, you could say the same thing about Trump. You could say on paper the exact same thing about Trump and the Republicans, but then why do they keep doing this? Because they are in culture.
Democrats are scrambling to find a new face. And the only thing they can agree on is no more Kamala. Some don't even want her to run for California governor. Tim Walz was out campaigning in South Carolina this weekend, where he quoted MLK Jr., ate fried fish with hot sauce, and thanked blacks. And then Tampon said Democrats need to be bigger bullies.
I'm getting called out on this because I called Donald Trump a wannabe dictator. It's because he is. It's because he is. Oh. The governor's being mean, and the governor's speaking out on that. Well, maybe it's time for us to be a little meaner. The thing that bothers a teacher more than anything is to watch a bully, to watch this bully, and to stop it. And when it's a child, you talk to them, and you tell them why bullying's wrong. But when it's adult like Donald Trump, you bully the out of him back. You push back.
After arresting him, calling him a Nazi, and shooting him, I'm worried about what being a bigger bully looks like. Instead of fighting Trump, Tampon should fight for you. Democrats don't even want kids in schools to take tests because it's not equitable, but they want to make Trump take one.
If we want to talk about something, we need to talk about whether or not he really has the cognitive ability because he is the current sitting president, and whether or not the 25th Amendment should apply is something that maybe we should be digging into.
Eric Swallwell is trying to win back the culture with F-bombs and tacos.
Hey, Congressman.
Can I help you?
What the is up with Trump always chickening out on tariffs?
Tacos are an inside joke that doesn't work because you have to explain it. Plus, like Greg said, everyone loves tacos. NBC wants Democrats to start looking to win men over at the gym. First, they said gym bros were white supremacists, and now they want their vote. If Democrats want to win men, they should be men. Don't just hand out flyers outside of Equinox. Go inside and lift. The Raging Cajun says if Democrats want to win, it's the English, stupid.
I'm a speak English man. Okay, no one uses the word oligarch at the checkout counter at Walmart, okay? Just use the language that the people use and then relate to them. The most important thing is we now know we have a problem. And I don't think we can go and solve the problem or address the problem by acting like we bros in some pool hall sitting around the street, you know, playing numbers or something. We could address it by talking about the struggles that young people and young men go through.
Speak English, lift weights, and come out of the closet. Don't fall asleep in there like Joe.
But first, back here at home, our top story, it is hard to imagine a more divisive, mean-spirited Democratic Party. In fact, their constant hysteria has long spilled over into outright violence. And to make matters worse, and we're going to look at this from a whole different perspective, their policies have put all of you at risk. This is something we have warned about over and over and over again. The number one preventable national security risk. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I pray to God I'm wrong. Have you heard those words from me? Take a look. And as I've been warning, I would say with almost 100% certainty, and again, I pray I'm wrong. I pray to God I'm wrong. The terrorists are taking advantage of Joe's open borders, and there are terror cells likely in this country plotting, planning, scheming an attack against our homeland. And the blame for that will lie squarely on the shoulders of Joe Biden. Sadly, over the weekend, our prediction again came true. Take a look at your screen. An unvetted illegal immigrant from Egypt with extremist views, now charged with 16 counts of attempted murder after purportedly yelling "Free Palestine" while attempting to burn people alive with homemade incendiary devices. His victims, many seriously injured, were part of a group that brings awareness to Israeli hostages still being held inside of Gaza. Make no mistake, this was a terrorist attack. And this is not the big one I'm warning about. That could happen at any point, any time. They are plotting, planning, scheming. We have known terrorists in this country, murderers, rapists, known cartel members, known gang members. Joe, Kamala, Mayorkas, all let him in unvetted. And by the way, this was a deranged individual allowed into our country by Biden, Harris, Mayorkas, and then gifted a work permit after he broke our immigration laws. This is what I mean when I say Democrats have blood on their hands. All those names have blood on their hands. In fact, according to the House Homeland Security Committee, pay close attention. Biden was president, 21 to 24. There were more than 50 cases of that are related to Islamic terrorism in our country in 29 U.S. states. That did not stop Biden. That did not stop Democrats actually in charge of the swamp from keeping your borders wide open. They didn't care. We have a lot coming up tonight. Border czar Tom Homan will give his first interview on this. But this isn't just about illegal immigration. It is past time for Democrats, the media mob, legacy media mob, to come to terms with the political violence from their side of the aisle. For years, what have we all witnessed? What have we chronicled on this program? You know, selective, feigned, phony, moral outrage from Democrats and the legacy media mob. Every day, how many times did they obsess over Charlottesville? And they never put it in its proper context. They never talked about January 6th. Many of you will peacefully, patriotically march to the Capitol so your voices will be heard. They never talked to the driver of the beast that said, no, Donald Trump never tried to commandeer the vehicle. They accused President Trump of inciting violence. Biden's DOJ treated angry parents at school board meetings like domestic terrorists. They did the same thing with traditional Catholics. They went after peaceful anti-abortion protesters. They, in their case, were locked up. Remember the elderly grandmother sentenced to years in prison? They told us that right-wing extremism was the greatest existential threat to our country. But as per usual, they were lying or delusional. In fact, the extremism has been coming from inside of their own party. And to this day, they still don't seem to care. Let's take you back, circa 2020, the summer of love, violent left-wing riots ripping across this country, killing dozens of Americans, causing billions of property damage. Oh, and by the way, cops were pelted with bricks, rocks, bottles, Molotov cocktails. 574 riots in total that we categorized as riots, and much more violence. And here's how top Democrats reacted. Kamala Harris said, the rioters, they're not going to stop. They shouldn't stop. And we're not going to stop supporting them. So beware. Take note. She said that to Stephen Colbert. And then Democrats went out and voted for her. Few Democrats had the courage to tell the truth, to condemn even the worst riots in 2020 that killed 24 Americans. That kind of political violence, all but excused, you know, from the far left, and it continued year in and year out. You have a deranged individual trying to assassinate U.S. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh at his home. The doxing of Supreme Court justices. President Trump surviving 2 would-be assassins. Democrats openly calling for both Trump and Elon Musk to be killed. Musk's flagship company, Tesla, targeted with domestic terrorism time and time and time again. Dozens of cars, dealerships, charging stations vandalized, shot at, burned. And meanwhile, the behavior from the far left Free Palestine crowd is even worse. Guy Benson, I think, put it best. He said if a right-wing movement had burned down a governor's mansion, murdered 2 foreign diplomats, firebombed kids and elderly people at a peaceful protest, in the span of 2 weeks, what would the coverage look like? What sort of national conversation would Democrats be having? But the pro-Palestinian crowd, well, they are undeterred. And few elected Democrats have ever had the courage to speak out. They are afraid of the squad. They're afraid of their radical base. Just today, so-called pro-Palestine demonstrators storming a stage at an event with the U.S. Navy Secretary. So let me be very clear tonight. The Democratic Party will tolerate vile anti-Semitism. They will tolerate 574 riots that kill Americans, cause billions in damage, and injure thousands of cops, while feigning, selective moral outrage over one riot at a Capitol years ago, if their side can excuse it. If they can use it for political purposes. If not, if it's their side, they ignore it, they lie about it, they can lie and make it up when it's about Trump and pretend, to be outraged. But it's phony. It's fake. It is political in nature, and frankly, it's despicable. The fact that Democrats never stood for 2 moms at the joint session speech of Donald Trump that lost their children because of their open border policies. They couldn't even stand for this young man who had cancer. Apparently the cancer, we learned over the weekend, came back. Our prayers are with that young 13-year-old man. They couldn't stand for moms that lost their children. Joe Biden, Kamala, Mayorkas, they never called. Blake and Riley's family, Rachel Morin's family, Jocelyn Nungary's family, the dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of other families, victims of murder, rape, violent crimes that they caused because of their wide-open border policies with no vetting. The legacy media mob gives them cover the entire way. Axios today openly worrying that Trump would use this weekend's terror attacks to further his anti-illegal immigration agenda. No, it is we've got to vet illegals. A lot of terrorists came into this country. A lot of gang members, cartel members, violent people, murderers, rapists came into our country. And other outlets jump through linguistic hoops trying to obscure the motives of the attacker. And remember, these reports in 2020, reporters, this is my favorite, claiming, oh, well, look at that picture right there. That report, look what it says at the bottom of that screen. Mostly peaceful protests. Look over the reporter's shoulder. Does that look peaceful to you? That's what fake news CNN told you. MSDNC said the same thing. And they wonder why the legacy media mob, state-run, is dead. This is more than just a political game. American lives are at stake.
The media will talk about Israel's role and remind us which religion is the religion of peace. But we know the truth. Trump pointed it out and was called racist for it. How many victims resulted from Democrats mocking our fears about the border? And like always, the media focuses on the Trump administration's reaction, not the fiery attack itself. On CNN, former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe slammed Kash Patel for calling it terrorism. CNN national security analyst Juliet Kayyem did the same. Because it's never the attack, it's the reaction. So as normal people fume that this illegal was led into exact terror, shameless Dems feign disgust, then retreat to uselessness, or worse. How soon before Chris Van Hollen visits and orders a mimosa with 2 straws? Don't order the cocktail. But it's simple. Vicious terror attacks are carried out against Americans in the name of a faraway cause that's driven by lies and hate. You can now kill an American here in the name of intifada, pushed by well-funded West-hating radicals. But for the left and the media, there's always something worse than terrorism. It's being wrong. For us, a terror attack spurs anger and frustration, but the media, they go on the defensive. Because it is far worse for them to admit they backed the wrong side. There goes their false sense of moral superiority, the kind that justified burning looted cities, the kind seen on those signs on front lawns in suburbs, signs in which the inhabitants profess their sanctimony. but there's nothing on those signs that speaks to the things we experience. Why isn't there a sign that states the obvious, like, we don't kill Jews here? Or we don't believe in protecting violent illegals? You know, it could read like this. We don't kill Jews here. We believe in legal immigration. We defend the Second Amendment. We want strong borders. We believe men can't be women, and we can't stand Jesse Waters. But, you know, maybe people don't want a Molotov thrown through their living room window. So they pretend that evil can only be Trump and America, which means every real evil can stroll right in. Let's welcome tonight's guest. He's Hispanic, who makes liberals panic. Former Trump advisor Steve Cortez. Even motivational speakers tell him to give up. Actor, writer, and comedian Jamie Lissow. She went from partying with rock stars to avoiding Brian Kilmeade in the halls. Host of Kennedy Saves the World podcast, Kennedy. And he's the reason CVS ran out of Father's Day cards. New York Times bestselling author, comedian, and former NWA World Champion, Tyrus. So, Steve, pretty glum topic for a Monday show, but what is your take on the reaction to this and how it came to be?
Well, first, not glum, though. Your nickname for me, your motto, the Hispanic who makes lefties panic. I love it. Do I owe you for that?
Yes, you do. I get a 10% royalty in perpetuity. I learned that from Kevin O'Leary.
Okay, wonderful. Well, listen, on this, grave attack, incredibly violent attack upon Americans, I think a couple things are worth noting. First is that Americans need to be armed, but particularly Jewish Americans, right? This is a very unfortunate, I think, reminder of that stark reality. But secondly, that Biden's open border, leaving the front door of America wide open for years, has incredibly intense consequences that may last, unfortunately, for years. How many more cretins like him are there in America who came in unvetted, unwelcome, but nonetheless present in our country? Thankfully, President Trump has gotten to work immediately on this, and the border is already under control just weeks into this new term. So as awful as this situation is, we can also celebrate that it's unlikely more jerks like this are coming in right now under Trump.
But well said. Jamie, you are unwelcome and unvetted. I cannot wait to hear your finely crafted jokes on this topic. Go ahead, start.
Well, first of all, I don't trust anybody with no shirt and jeans.
I
know. No one without a shirt and jeans has ever showed up and done a good deed.
That is true. That is true.
I heard,
well done.
I heard when Kamala heard this story, she was like, Molotov cocktail, I'll have one. And then she goes, it's 9 a.m. somewhere.
3. You got 3 so far. I'm amazed.
I did. I do feel for the people of Colorado. It's just they're great people. It's obviously a tragedy. When I went to Boulder, Colorado, I went right where this kind of happened, right around the corner. And when I called him, I go, I'm gonna be at the club at like 7. And the guy goes, okay, but he goes, bring oxygen. And I go, listen, Greg, I'm not the most famous comedian in the world, but I feel like that's something the club should provide.
4.
Well done, my friend.
Can he go for 5? The crowd's excited. And here's the pitch. Swung on and missed.
No, he's going to pass.
I'm going to pass.
Good for you. Kennedy, don't you get the sense that it's actually the fact that they might be wrong is worse than a terror act and for the media? Because they've been pushing this narrative. We heard about this massacre that apparently happened over the weekend, and then it just kind of went away.
Yeah, and that in and of itself is part of the problem of this anti-Semitism, this malignant anti-Semitism that has taken hold, and it's deadly in this country. And when it's not deadly, that is accidental because it is intended to take as many lives and cause as much harm as possible. And, unfortunately, some of the most vocal members of the Free Palestine movement are also very murderous. So, a week and a half ago, I was in Poland with Guy Benson and Emily Compagno and Mary Catherine Ham and Molly Hemingway. And we went to Treblinka, which was a death camp, an extermination camp. We went to Majdanek, which was a concentration camp, Auschwitz and Birkenau, where 1.5 million people were killed. And so, and as we're going through this journey, it's really heavy. And it's kind of stunning that what happened there, the psychological manipulation and the extermination of millions and millions of Jews and Catholic Poles, there are a lot of people who actively hope that they could make that happen again. And, you know, they may not have the sophistication of the SS, but you do have this murderous intent of people who are hell-bent. And while we were there, the young couple that was just about to get engaged in D.C., who worked for the Israeli embassy, they were at a Jewish museum in D.C., and they were gunned down. You know, Josh Shapiro, the Jewish governor of Pennsylvania, his house was set on fire. So my question is, if the media turns away, are you doing it in a way that is almost complicit and fanning the flames of other hateful people who really would like to, in their own awful way, accomplish what the Nazis did during World War II at those camps?
Fair point. Jamie, you got a joke for that? Just kidding. Tyrus, the identity politics thing is interesting to me. I don't know if you caught on, like, how it just kind of goes away.
Well, I think we need to, there's two things about it. I don't know how many videos over the last 3-4 years that we saw of military-aged young men in shape from all walks of life walking into this country. And then at midnight being flown to different parts of America.
Yeah.
And now we're starting to see some of them come out. But here's the deal. They're being protected and helped by Americans. So if you look at it, if I was to do that for somebody, I would be held accountable. If I knew somebody was doing something and I allowed them in my house and I helped them do things, like the people who gave this guy a work visa need to be held accountable. Your actions caused a massacre. And he's not even unapologetic. He was like, hey, no big deal. He confessed on the spot. That is blatant arrogance. That is to the point of evil to where, and he didn't just get like that by himself. He just chose to be first. So now the good news is that we have ICE in place. We have law enforcement who's backed and has dignity again. But the problem is we don't know where any of them really are. And when you have sanctuary cities that are these governors that sit there with their smug asses and hide these murderous men, they didn't come here looking for the American dream, because if they did, as soon as they got into California or Texas, they would look for jobs, because that's where the jobs are at when you're good with your hands. They'd be making money and sending home to their families, like actual immigrants who come to this country. They came here with a purpose. It also wasn't a small mistake when we look back at those films. All of them had nice, clean shoes. All of them had nice stuff, and they had little wristbands. Yeah. If you remember, where am I going? Oh, Philadelphia. Who was filling this out for them? We're starting to see this, and it's disheartening and scary, because now, to your point where you said Jewish people need to start carrying guns, no, everybody does. Because as soon as no, seriously, you cannot. Greg makes jokes, he's a talented guy. He goes somewhere and they're like, well, he's from the right. He's part of the problem. So I'm going to be a hero because I'm going to take down a Gutfeld. You don't do that because I got kids to support, as you heard in the beginning. So 5. But it's terrible, the fact that we're seeing this, and the media, they are part of the problem. They help with the hiding. They help with all this stuff. They're the propaganda media of the left, and they still are okay with what is going on. That's why they're not covering the story, because what we always talked about, they cracked a few eggs. It's one thing. There's 700,000 ones that are doing good.
Yeah. All right. Let's do something lighter. Something really light. Tampon Timmy.
Woo!
Yeah, thank God for Tamp.
If you'll be in the New York area and would like tickets to see Gutfeld, go to foxnews.com/Gutfeld and click on the link to join our studio audience.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.